So somebody on the group posted these. Somebody on the group posted about the Druids, but it's actually been deleted. The post's been removed, and it was a really good thread. Actually, really interesting one. It's disappointing when there's loads and loads of positive input on something and it gets deleted. Luckily, a woman put 4 different links to 4 different accounts of the Celts by the Romans. And I've always wanted to actually read every single little bit of what they wrote about the Celts and the Druids. I'm not too sure if this is absolutely everything they wrote. They must have wrote more, but I think now these are the main 4 documented accounts. I don't even know who put these links because the thread's been deleted now. I know who started the post. So luckily I actually saved them into PDF file, each of the 4 ones. So I'm going to go through them now. So I think I've read one of them before, but I don't know which one it is out of these 4. I'll probably know when I get to it. It's the one that most people have read that tells you, about the Druids. Apparently they had a leader and the leader was picked and all this. And so I'm going to go through this. This is the first time I think I've read this piece. So I'm going to tell you what I think of it. My first reading of it, and I probably think more after I've reflected on it, but I just wanted to record like my first reading of it. So Pliny the Elder was a Roman natural philosopher who was educated in Rome and came into contact with the Celts during his military service in Germany and Gaul. Well, they never conquered Germany, did they, anyway? So, I don't know why. I mean, maybe the Gauls and the Brits were more reasonable and cooperative. The Germans were meant to be more barbaric. We don't. It's odd that Germany would be a lot easier to conquer because you didn't have to cross the ocean and the sea. It's very strange what happened. The fact that if you were gonna, why is it that they didn't conquer Germany when it was on land, yet they crossed the ocean, which puts a major obstacle in the way, and then they succeeded in England? It would be odd. It's just so unusual. And if the Germans were winning against them, despite the strategies of the Romans, shields and formation, why didn't the Celts in Britain adopt whatever strategy the Germans were using? It doesn't make sense, does it? If these military tactics of the Romans were undefeatable, then why did the Germans beat them? Why didn't they beat the Germans? And why did the... you see, maybe the Germans had been observing them, see what was going on, and they just figured out how they could beat them despite all the shields and armour and military tactics. And maybe the Britons didn't get that information passed on. I'm not sure. You would have thought some Germans would have... If there was a war going on, an invasion, and they really didn't want to be taken over by the Romans, why didn't the Germans come over to England and give them some advice? There's a lot that isn't communicated in it. Also, the fact of the name Celts and Kells, which is, Celts, Kells, there's a lot of confusion with the C letter and how it's spelt, And there's a lot of places that are like Cheltenham that clearly is meant to be Keltenham. The following is an adaptation of Pliny the Elder. The natural history. Why was he called Pliny the Elder? I mean, didn't he have an actual name? I call myself Pliny the Elder. Or is he older? I'm Pliny and now I'm older. Did they go by these weird titles? Pliny the Elder, John the Strong. Didn't he have a first name and a last name or what? Okay, let's get into it now. Here we go. It is evident that the Celtic, or the Celti, these Celtai, funny, Celtai, Celtici, even, Celtici, calls them the Celtici, Celtici, have sprung from their Celtic berry. It's funny that berry is the name of something that you eat, a berry, isn't it? They've sprung from them. It's like they've evolved, or they've come from them. They have been born of the Celtic berry and have come from Lustiana. Well, is that not sort of like meant to be? I'm guessing, I don't know off to the top of my head where Lustiana is, but I'm guessing it's something like, wouldn't Lustiana be something like Istanbul or something like that? I don't know. Something like that around there, or Russia even, maybe even Russia. I'm not sure. But I wouldn't say that when it's clearly obvious that we came from that coastal people spreading up around the edge of France and Gaul and Spain through the cairns. That's why we've got cairns all around the British coast. So I don't know. I don't think all the people, a certain group of us came up around the coast of Europe. So, you know, although the Scottish have got evidence for, at some point, women, particularly women, coming over from, Russia, Transylvania, all that way, Romania, all that side. I'm not saying people didn't come in that way, but we know that the major megalith builders came up for the east coast, the west coast of France, and around from straight up from Algeria through France, all the prehistoric cave art, and up around the coast. There's no doubt about that. Someone came up that way. Someone came up that way for sure. So I don't know which ones of the Celtai he's talking about. But what's interesting here is he says, and have come from Lustiana from their religious rites, their language, and the names of their towns. So he's saying that the names of the towns are important, and the language of this people who came before the Celtic berry, and their religious practices and the religious rites, the language and the names of the towns. So actually, naming places is important. You see, that's why it's tragic that a lot of the named places have been changed. We see from maps, when you look at the John Speed maps and Jeffrey's maps, that someone's been playing around with the place names. 1 minute it's Heathersfield, then it's Huddersfield, then it's, Huddersfield, then it's Marsden, it's Marsden, and then you've got Meltham, oh no, it's Marsden, and then you've got Marsden, oh no, it was Morden, More. But one thing's for sure, the history and the knowledge is recorded in the town names and in the names of people. And I've got a video that's an Irish lady on Merriman Videos is saying that at one point in Ireland, they were making it illegal. Certain names to be used and written down was unlawful, and they forced them to be changed and change the spelling. Now, if you're going to do that, you're erasing clarity of meaning of words, you're erasing clarity of origin of words, and you're erasing the actual people's lineages and history. So if someone's born from somewhere, if they're sprung from somewhere and certain religious rites, this guy, Pliny the Elder, he's making a connect. One thing he's doing is saying that religious rites, a language, which is what records meaning and knowledge, and placing town names, there's some sort of the religious rites are connected to words in the language and how knowledge is preserved in the words and the language of a culture and the place names. Now, if Merriman's giving evidence that whether it was the Christian church or whether it was, whatever forces were coming into Ireland, they were making them change their names. They were making them change them. So they didn't want the actual history and knowledge of the culture or the religious rights to be preserved. Now, the religious rights were preserved by the Druids, and it was part of the Romans' mission to delete the Druids, erase them, and overthrow that authority. So it seems to me that part of erasing a religion, which they wanted to remove the Druids and erase them, according to Caesar, unless the Druids, it was all a plan, and the Druids what brought the Romans in and tricked them all and actually really, wanted the Romans to come and help them take over their own people because they couldn't control their own people. But you would have thought, but then again, you've got scenes the Romans are writing of, mass slaughter of Druids. So the religious rights, the language, and the names of the places are all therefore connected. So anyone who changed them or erased them is wanting to remove any knowledge or history, proper investigation and understanding of it. Never mind archaeologists are having troubles, figuring out, this and that. Because, I've got some video footage of, well, actually, I could play you, actually. I might be able to actually play you it.
And it would hit the altar stone right in the centre of the monument. Now, what this meant, I don't pretend to know, and nor do most of my colleagues. That's the lovely thing about it.
No one knows, and neither do my colleagues. That's the lovely thing about it. What's lovely about the expert in a field of study, particularly an archaeologist or someone or an anthropologist, saying that they don't really know, and neither do their colleagues, and that's the lovely thing about it. But yet, we've got Professor Alice, Mike Parker Pearson, and God knows who going around digging up religious sites and tombs, well, they don't really know anything about it. Someone knows something about it. Now, what gets me is this, right? And this is very important. Look, there's a load of graves and tombs, right? Why don't you dig them up then? Do some investigating. Oh, it's a Catholic, it's the burial of, Sir Walter Raleigh. Well, why don't you dig it up then and do some forensics? Oh no, we can't dig up Sir Walter Raleigh's grave. It's a religious tomb. It's holy. It's a holy shrine. We'll have to get permission from the Pope. Oh, so archaeologists can't dig it up without, permission from the Archbishop of Canterbury or the Pope. You can't pick and dig up, people's bodies. It's sacred and holy, Well, we have to get permission from the church. You can't go messing around with graves without permission from the church. Oh, so the archaeologists can't just say, in the name of archaeology, we're going to go pick some bones and dig them about, Oh, look, it's St. Cuthbert's burial chamber grave. We're going to do some picking about it, archaeologists. So we'll actually, no, we'll have to actually ask the Archbishop if we can dig it up. All right, so you can't just dig up holy sites unless you get permission. Right, fair enough. Can't dig up holy sites unless you get permission. We've got no reason to. We've got no reason to dig up St. Cuthbert's grave. Why is that? Well, we don't need to find out all about it. It's St. Cuthbert's grave. Well, how do you know that? Well, it says it on there. Look, it says St. Cuthbert's grave. He was buried here, blah, blah, blah. And here lies Sir Cuthbert. And there's a statue of him. So we know what it is. And we know who he is. So we don't need to find it out because we know it is. It tells you on there. It's written on there. All right. Oh, great, right. So if you don't really need to find out about it, then there's no point pulling it to bits. Well, they knew where Cromwell were buried, but they still dug him up and dragged his bones around everywhere. Oh, well, that's different. He was an enemy of the state. He conquered the royals and he wanted to get revenge, so dug him up and pulled it about. Well, did they ask permission from the Archbishop first? It's desiccating, it's meant to be a sacred tomb. Right. We've got tombs in Ireland like Glen Druids, right? It's a tomb of ancient ancestors, right? You don't need, what do you else need to know about it? It's the tomb of the ancient ancestors and a holy shrine to it. Now, what's the difference between St Cuthbert's grave and an ancient prehistoric grave tomb monument. Is that on it? It tells you what the fuck it is. It tells you what it is, right? You read it, right? Unless you don't believe that it is what it is and you won't have to dig it up for forensics to prove that it's fake or something, that's not even really the person buried there. Now, you might be able to, if you suspect that it's fake, you might be able to get around the Archbishop's permission if you think that he might be lying. Maybe there are grounds for that. But you're getting into difficult territory, right? Right. Whose grave is it? It's an ancient prehistoric grave of Ireland. A tomb. A shrine. You go there to remember them. To remember who? Well, we don't know. We don't know who's there. We need to find out who it is. Well, it tells you in the shape and monument of it. It's a very important person. What was, difficult to put into position. Right? We know what he is. It's an important person of Ireland. Right? Rest in peace. Right? You don't need to know any more than that. Here lies an important person of Ireland. Right? There. It's telling me. Because why? Because it's there. Because it's a dolmen. Here it is. It tells you about its physical form and presence. It exists. Here is an ancient Irish important person ancestry. Rest in peace, leave him alone. Right? Now, if you don't know that, what more information do you need? Oh, what the actual day was, he didn't say, he buried in whatever, we'll get fit. Well, you don't need to pull it to bits, to do that, do you? It doesn't need to be pulled to bits or destroyed. And why do you need to know the exact date? Is it really going to make much difference, to say they already know the date of it anyway, apparently, they've already got the date of it. Well, what else do they need to know? And who are they asking permission from? We don't even have any religious people who are really running that religion anymore, but that doesn't mean that it's not holy, site and protected, now archaeologists run it all, the heritage runs it all, permissions, there are no religious advocates for that anymore, It's, we've got to investigate it to find out. What reason have you got to? I might as well say, right, all these graves are fake, and I don't believe any of those people are buried there, in any of those graves of the saints. I think the Archbishop's lying, and I want them all forensically tested to see if it's the truth, right? Dig them all up. No, you can't do that. Well, there are issues, And the next thing, they've built a shopping centre around the dolmen, a model of one, to make it look right, Cherrywood. Oh, it's all right to put dolmens in shopping centres. Here's, look, there's a dolmen. Well, it's not the actual one, but it's a model of one, but at least it shows that it's all right to have it in a shopping centre built around it. So that means when we start building a shopping centres close up to the other ancient sites in Ireland, you won't mind, you won't be bothered about messing around with the ancestors' spirits and tombs. They're quite happy sat there in a shopping centre. Have you asked them? I know. Archbishop, seeing though you advocating and loving the spread of commerce and consumerism that is infecting the planet with greed and the devil's influence on the minds of people of addiction around the whole planet, Archbishop of Canterbury, why don't we build a shopping centre around Canterbury Cathedral? Even though it might as well be a shopping centre with all the bookmarks, postcards and fucking, memorabilia that you're fucking selling, making a killing out of, and then you complain you can't pay for the roof fixing. Why don't we... Well, they have built a shopping centre around, York, haven't they? Because there's all York City around it. It's pretty much like having a shopping centre built around, the cathedral. It's almost a celebration of consumerism. Yet, the church, in contradiction, have a complete entire advocacy religion that purports to be protecting us from sin. Save us from sin, deliver us from evil. Greed. Oh, look. We've entombed the city of York, fucking Minster, in cake and bun shops around it. An orgy of religious celebration of cake eating. Shame on you. You might as well have all the fucking... They might as well all spontaneously combust in flames. What has become of the church? No wonder Boris Johnson is lying. It's just flaming lies. The minds have been taken over by Satan. He's so insanely corrupted, the church nowadays, of what it purports and claims to be. And when you start pointing the finger at them, then they go, oh no, Africa, save the poverty countries, protect Ukraine, send them arms. No, hello, we're talking about you, the greed and corruption of England, of this island, that is inflicting the minds of the people, which you are not choosing to do anything about. And then whenever we try and pin you down, then a war breaks is squeezing the nipples of the Ukrainians, so we're all sending them charity. Just a minute, Archbishop, what's going on here with all this consumerism and greed and cake bun shops? Excess. Oh no! God likes all things. God likes wondrous variety. Allah likes wondrous variety in cakes. Yeah, it's making people unhealthy, and it's greed. It's all for money. In fact, isn't money itself greed? Oh no, we'll squeeze Ukraine's nipple, but boy cried wolf. No, Ukraine. Hello, Archbishop. Are you leading the House of Lords into a future of addiction, greed, and excesses beyond the realms of what is reasonable in life? Oh no, Ukraine! Ah, my nipple! Ukraine! Ah, send me, help Ukraine! Ah, I'm been accused of being a devil worker! Ukraine! Squeeze the nipple! Archbishop, are you leading this country into excess of greed and evil? And stop squeezing Ukraine's fucking nipple to distract us, you cunt. Because, the more pressure I put on the Archbishop of this country and government, the harder Ukraine's nipple is being squeezed and torn off, so we have to send money to Ukraine. Fucking, look, government of England, you corrupt, evil, addictive bastards. We will fucking crucify you. Ukraine! You're squeezing my nipple! Quick, send help Ukraine! Help Ukraine! I'll fucking crucify you, Boris! I'll fucking crucify you, greedy bastard! Ukraine! Help my nipple! Help Ukraine! My nipple! You fucking lying bastard, Boris! You fucking forgery! This is it. Anyway, back to Pliny now. So, I had a little bit of a diversion there. So yeah, the names of the towns and the language are important in the religious rites, yet they've all been erased and changed. So it's difficult for us to find out what the truth is about our prehistoric history. Pliny knew that. He said that we sprung from Lustiana. I think the religious rites, language and names of towns has come up from Algeria and round the coast. But he definitely puts a connection between names of places and religious rites. Now, the funny thing about opposite to the coast is the island called Britannia. The funny thing about Britannia is the first few letters, BRI, is a little bit like the Brigantes, isn't it? The Brigantes or Brigid, it's BRI, Brigid, Brigantes. And the thing about Britannia, the island itself, it is long. You know, like in America, they've got Long Island. It's actually like an elongation, it's long. Whereas island is more a rounder sort of shape in contrast to the shape of England. It's almost like Brigantes, Bridge, Brigid, Britain, BRI. It's this BRI, isn't it? Britannia. so celebrated in the records of Greece and of our own country. They're saying that it's celebrated. Really? Is this while we're being invaded? It is located to the northwest and with a large tract of intervening sea. Lies opposite to Germany, Gaul and Spain. Well, it's not really opposite to Spain, is it? By far the greater part of Europe. His former name was Albion. So he's saying that it used to be called Albion, but now it's Bridge. A-L-B-I-O-N. Albion. Albion. Bi means two, doesn't it? Like B-I, like you've got bicycle, like two pedals or two wheels. It's like two islands, isn't it? One island and two islands. It's like bi. B-I. Albion. Not albinos. He said its former name was Albion. Before that, really? But at a later period, all islands of which we shall now briefly make mention were included under the name of. But a later period, we're calling the name of Britannia. Brittany. It's like Brittany, isn't it? It's a bit like Brittany, but that is a place in France, Brittany. The part that's actually where Karnak is. Albion. The thick, fleecy wool has been estimated or esteemed for the manufacture of carpets for the very earliest times. It's quite clear from what we read in Homer that they were in use in this time. The Gauls embroidered them in a different manner from that which is practiced by the Parthians. Wool is compressed also for making felt. Felt's actually quite easy to make, which is soaked in vinegar, is capable of resisting even iron, and, what is still more, after having gone through the last process, wool will even resist fire. The refuse someone taken out of the vat of the scourer is used for making mattresses. All right, so they did have mattresses. That guy doing the Hillthorpe video said that they had mattresses. An invention, I fancy, of the Gauls. At all events, it is by Gaelic names that we distinguish the different sorts of mattresses at the present day. They're using actually Gaelic names for naming different types of mattresses. Babylon was very famous for making embroidery in different colours. I actually believe that last sentence. Babylon was very famous for making embroidery in different colours, and hence materials of this kind have obtained the name Babylonian. The method of weaving cloth with more than 2 threads was invented by Alexandria. These cloths are called plumeta. It was in Gaul that they were first used to create a checkered pattern. They're saying it in Gaul. The thing with that checkered pattern is it kind of makes you think of the poppies, doesn't it? But the problem with weaving is you're always going backwards, forwards and up and down. So by nature of weaving, if you're going to have any pattern and change the threads, it's a lot easier to do crisscross patterns than it is to do round patterns. And the Celts, actually, all the ancient prehistoric art is all spiral and round. But then you get this crisscross pattern, but it just happens to be when you're weaving, it's easier to do that. So did the crisscross pattern just come about from the fact that it's easier to do a crisscross pattern in weaving, or was it influenced by the poppy, or is it just happened to be a bit of a coincidence of both, like usually these things just seem to coincide, It is related that the Gauls, separate from us as they were by the Alps, which then formed an almost insurmountable bulwark, had as their chief motive for invading Italy its dried figs, its grapes, its oil, its wine, samples of which had been brought back to them by Helico, a citizen of Helvati, who had been staying in Rome to practice there as an artisan. We may offer some excuse then for them when we know that they came in quest of these various products, though at the price of even war. Sounds like they're knocking around with each other quite a bit and hanging around to say that they're having wars. Now he's claiming that the Gauls actually attacked Rome for its produce, saying like, the Vikings were raiding us, and saying the Gauls were raiding Italy. Let men even at the present day wear gold upon the arms in the form of bracelets known as Dardania, because the practice first originated in Dardania and called Veroli in the language of the Celts, Verea in the Celtibria. Let women wear gold upon their arms and all the fingers, their necks, their ears, and the tresses of their hair. On this occasion we must not omit to mention the admiration that is lavished upon this plant by the Gauls, the Druids, for that is the name they gave to their magicians. Held nothing more sacred than mistletoe, so he's saying, and the tree that bears it, supposing always that tree to be the oak. Of itself, the robur is selected by them to the form of whole groves, and they perform none of their religious rites without employing branches of it. So much so that it's very probable that the priests themselves may have received their name from the Greek name for that tree. In fact, it is a notion to them that everything that grows on it has been sent immediately from heaven, and the mistletoe upon it is proof that the tree has been selected by God himself as the object of his special favour. Well, the thing about mistletoe is that it's actually something that grows on a tree up in the tops, and it's actually another thing that grows in it and attaches to it. Symbolically, it's almost like an idea, You can have an idea that forms somewhere. Where the idea comes from, usually it comes from somewhere else. Ideas are almost blowing around in the air like seeds or germs, It's difficult to have an original idea that has not either come from the external world around you, from another shape or form, and then when it comes into your mind, it grows in your mind. So it's almost like the mistletoe up in the tree is almost like an idea taking root in the mind, like an idea, and then it attaches to it and then kind of grows. So symbolically, I think on the oak tree, the mistletoe is more like it's a manifestation, or it's a good analogy to celebrate and demonstrate how ideas work in a way and grow. But then again, underneath the oak tree, we've got interesting things going on, and they were supposed to put all the cover under it and cover stuff up, and apparently certain Amanita species can grow under there as well as under fir trees. I mean, that's where you even get the whole presents under a Christmas tree, because the Amanitas grow under the fir tree, but then you get different varieties growing under the oak tree. So is there some sort of cover-up going there? Wrapping presents, covering them up? I'm not sure, because, the scientists don't always want to be straight with you. So, but then again, the whole thing that we get to celebrate, that's the only thing remaining of these ancient peoples and the people before the Druids and the Celt, the prehistoric people, are the stone monuments. But stone is not living. The thing with stone is that it lasts forever. It's not perishable, whereas trees, you can have very, 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 very old trees, but trees can be, cut down or burned or whatever. Unfortunately, I think they have been. They have been all cut down and burned, because we don't really have anything really left in wood of what the Celts actually had. There's very little left. So the only thing, what Howard Crower says, the only 10% that is left is the stone, not the wood, and that's a shame, Although we still have got trees and we know what grows on them and underneath them, but are the scientists telling us the truth about them? Were the Druids telling the truth? Was as much as a cover-up as it is now for information, facts and truths, it could have been as much as a cover-up for information, facts and truths back then, and they were just going through we've got church now, and we've got ceremony in church, we've got sacrament in church. It all means something symbolically. We don't know what goes on in the priest's private training and all this, and it could have been the case back then that these things these rituals that they went through were merely their formalities of presenting to the public, in the same manner that the ceremonies of what the archbishops go through now, it means, we only interpret it face value, whereas the priests, when they're reading out the blood of Christ, blah blah blah, or for the Bible, if you understand it properly, it's got a deeper meaning and reference to something else, which is likely what the Druids were doing when they were doing their ceremonies. It meant something more deeper and symbolically in meaning, more than what it meant on the surface value to the general public, which is why I would say the mistletoe is more like the actual. It's a very good representation of how ideas work and take root in your mind, pass ideas around. And you're certainly interested in things like that if you're having ideas of moving large stones around and building structures, dolmens, cairns, and getting other people to do it when it's your idea, taking root in people's minds and managing to persuade them into doing it, moving them around, So to me, it makes sense that it's the mistletoe symbolic just for ideas, It's like an idea to represent an idea. But that's what I think. The mistletoe, however, is but rarely found upon the oak, and when found, is gathered with rites replete. Maybe mistletoe has got some properties they're not telling us about. I don't know. Maybe it has. This is done more particularly on the 5th day of the moon, the day which is beginning. You can find a lot of mistletoe in Canada, apparently. There is a hell of a lot of it in Canada. I watched a video. Because the moon, not yet in the middle of her course, has already considerable power and influence. And they call mistletoe by a name which signifies in their language the all healing. Well, that's interesting. All healing. The all healing. Having made all due preparation for the sacrifice and a banquet. A banquet beneath the trees. Banquet of what though? You're having a banquet beneath the trees. That means eating something. Now, are they eating the mistletoe under there because it's meant to be poisonous? Or are they eating something else that grows under the tree under there, which, I know what that is. They bring there hither 2 white bulls, the horns of which are bound, them for the first time, clad in a white. Who did he even watch this? How does he know that they weren't just putting it on display for him? The priest ascends a tree and cuts the mistletoe. I don't believe this for a second. It's getting a bull and going and climbing up a tree. It doesn't. I don't buy this. This is for sale, and I'm not buying it because I don't think the Druids actually were that much into eating meat at all. I think they were very much on the herbs. Anyone with observational skills in this country and intellect of observations of nature is very, very aware of the fact of it's anyone observing bulls and what bulls eat themselves. Bulls eat greenery and grow very strong, you know. Clad in white robe, ascends a tree, cuts the mistletoe with a sickle, which is received by others in a white cloth. They then sacrifice the victims. Yeah, but he just said they brought a bull, but then victims. Offering up. Alright, I wonder if it might represent like some sort of, not, when he's saying sacrifice the victims, offering up their prayers that God will render this gift of his auspicious to those who he has granted it. When he just says sacrifice the victims, right? Is this all he's writing down? Is this the only detail we've got? He just says then sacrifice the victims. It doesn't actually say in what manner and style, does it? Taking it's a granted that belief within the mistletoe, taking in drink will impart fecundity to all animals that are barren, and that it is an antidote for all poisons. Such are the religious feelings which we find entertaining towards trifling objects among others. So that's the paragraph of that ceremony there, right? He doesn't. All he's saying is sacrificing what? Wait, but he says sacrifice victims. He just said they brought a white bull, right? But then he doesn't say sacrifice a bull. It says sacrifice victim S. Remember the two white bulls? Who were two white bulls? Sacrifice victims. There is another method which has been invented in both Gaul and Britain of enriching earth by the use of marl, loose spoil of clay and lime. The soil is looked upon as containing a greater amount of fertilizing properties and acts as a fat in relation to the earth. The Udai and the Pictones have rendered their lands remarkably fertile by the aid of limestone, which is also found to be particularly beneficial to the olive and the vine. Well, if it sounds like they're doing a hell of a lot of things that are going to be growing, then if they've made it fertile, there's a lot of trees, plants and herbs growing then. So they can't have been that much obsessed with bulls. If they were making fertile the land for growing things, it seems like they counted quite a lot on plants. The Gauls were the first to employ the bolter, straining screen that is made of horsehair. The mode of getting in a harvest varies considerably in the vast domains of the provinces of Gaul. A large hollow frame, armed with teeth and supported on two wheels, is driven through the standing grain, the beasts being yoked behind it. The result being that the ears are torn off and fall within the frame. The ears of the crops. I think that's what it means. The ears are separated by the aid of paddle forks. It sounds like they had some sort of like farming machinery mechanism set up then. And this is before windmills, isn't it? It's before windmills and water wheels. Sounds like they had a lot of wooden machinery then to me, this. In some places, again, the corn is torn up by the roots, and it is asserted by those who adopt this plan that it is as good as a light turning up for the ground, whereas in reality they deprive it of its juices. There are differences in respects also in places where they thatch their houses with straw. They keep the longest stalks for that purpose, and where hay is scarce, they employ the straw for litter. The straw of panic is never used for thatching, and that of millet is mostly burned. Barley straw, however, is always preserved as being the most agreeable of all. As for food for oxen, the Gaulish provinces, panic and millet are gathered ear by ear with the aid of a comb carried in the hand. So I thought they said that the Celts didn't actually do that much farming. To what extent they were doing is questionable in comparison to other plants that they could grow. And this is talking about Gaul now, not actually in Britain. Mattresses are inventions to which are indebted to the Gauls. Ancient usage of Italy is still kept in remembrance in the word strumentum, the name given by us to beds stuffed with straw. I remark in the first place that there are some foreign nations which, in obedience to long-established usage, employ certain plants for the embellishment of the person. That among some barbarous peoples the females stain the face by means of various plants. There can be little doubt, and among the Daxi and Sarmati we find even the men marking their bodies. There is a plant in Gaul similar to the plantago in appearance, and known there by the name of glastum, with it both married women and girls among the people of Britain are in vile habit of staining the body. Well, he's saying it's vile. When taking part in the performance of certain sacred rites, rivaling hereby the swarthy hue of the Ethiopians, they go in a state of nature. A state of nature. He says a state of nature. That could be some sort of ceremony or even religious ritual or something. If it's a state of nature, maybe they coloured their bodies with things when they were going to do, like, if they were going to do religious experience, if they were going to do colourful. If you're going to do a colourful, experience, and he's comparing it to Ethiopians. I'm pretty sure that wasn't that Ibogaine culture in Africa still? Isn't that long established, that Ibogaine ritual, not unlike ayahuasca? I wonder if they might have painted themselves when they were doing sort of equivalent of baptism or something like that. That's something that springs to mind. It could be possible. We know too that from plants are extracted admirable colours for dyeing, and not to mention the berries of the Galatia. Well, they mentioned berry before in the name, didn't they? The Celtiberry. And they said that the names of places and things like that and peoples were to do with religious rites. So Celtiberry, if it's like Celtiberry, then the term berry comes from, and berry, people of a berry, people of, also burial, bury, to bury, burrows, burials, bury, Celtiberry, to bury the people, to bury them. But also when you're alive doing certain religious rites of colour, they're actually colouring themselves with berries. or covering themselves, the bodies in it. Now that's bringing up the Tassila Denasia art in my head, which I've got a picture of on my wall, because he's covered himself in the mushrooms on the picture, if that is a legitimate Algerian artwork. I'm dubious about everything. They say it's legitimate, but it wasn't invented by the Mountbattens or someone conjured up in the 1800s as a fake or forgery. It's it wasn't drawn by Hitler in the Second World War out in the desert in Algeria. If it literally, authentically, and actually that is the actual true original artwork that those people drew, and it's not fake, then they are covering themselves in the mushrooms, and there's actually crisscross patterns all over that thing. So when he's saying here, when they draw in colours over the body, and then they go into a state of nature, what does he mean by the state of nature? It could be something to do like, with the rebirth. Like, a birth is a natural experience. It's almost like if it was coloured in. In fact, they were drawing it on the wall, weren't they? They were drawing the religious experiences on the cave using coloured berries and stuff like that, on the actual cave. Now we've got to a stage where they're actually saying that the Celts drew on each other and drew on themselves on the bodies when they're going possibly for these experiences. There's that there. We know too that from plants extracted admirable colours for dyeing and the reserve for the military costume of our generals, other people beyond God. We know too from lustria which furnish their caucus. You see, what did the Romans actually know too much even at that stage about the prehistoric religion? They might not have known that certain people came up through that prehistoric religion around on the further side of Gaul. The Romans knew a lot about the Mediterranean. Why did they talk about the other place? Or were the Druids the rivals? The Alps produce twin colours, hues. Similar to sarvin is the herb known as slago. Care is taken to gather it without the use of iron. The right hand being passed for the purpose to the left sleeve of tunic, as though the gatherer were in the act of committing a theft. What? He's just commenting on the skill. Maybe he's just commenting there on the procedure, and there's a certain way of doing something, like a certain way of lifting something, a certain technique. Maybe he's also just making general reference to what I mean, sneaky about stuff. The clothing too must be white, the feet bare and washed clean. Maybe that's just because they don't want it's health and hygiene. Sacrifice of bread and wine must be made before gathering it. Bread and wine. It is carried also in a new napkin. What is this thing? Without the use of iron. What is this herb? Similar to savin is a herb known as slago. Do we know which one it actually is? The Druids of Gaul have pretended that this plant should be carried about the person as a preservative against accidents of all kinds. Protection against accidents. And that the smoke of which is extremely good for the maladies of the eyes. See, we've got reference to smoke here, and actually smoking. Oh, right, do they actually burn things? You gotta be kidding me. I've heard it all now. So they're actually using inhaling things through smoke. Before, apparently, we didn't inhale things through. Well, actually, people have always used frankincense. They've had frankincense and myrrh and stuff like that. You know, they usually only think that they say that smoking wasn't invented until we went over to South America, and all the Indians and North American Indians were actually properly smoking, full-on turking. But they definitely had inhaling certain concoctions before then, before we went over to Americas, because they actually had incenses which were affecting people. Interesting. And for the eyes, he's talking about for the eyes. It's like, oh, carrots help you see in the dark better. And protection. It's, you know, the interpretation of this, it's so, I don't really want to have to go into it, because there are reasons, and Howard Crower says that there are reasons why not to go into it, because it's not polite to go into it. The people of Gaul, when hunting, tipped their arrows with hellebore, taking care to cut away the parts of the wound in the animal so slain. The flesh, they say, is all the more tender for it. They're actually using poison darts and arrows. Why hadn't I heard about this before? Why is it that it's only these anthropologists who study South American cultures always come back about this curare? Ooh, you know, the pygmies, they're using curare, using poison arrows and darts, as if it's something, you know, they've never witnessed or encountered before. Here we've got Pliny the Elder talking about the Gauls using poison-tipped stuff, by the sounds of it. What I want to know is, if you've just shot an animal with poison and it's killed it because the poison's gone into the animal, clearly probably causing a heart attack or whatever it's done to it, or however it kills it, and then they said they're cutting away the parts of the wound. How is that going to get the poison out of it when the poison's gone through its entire blood veins into its body? If you eat the animal, you're still going to eat the freaking poison. Cutting away from the wound is not going to do any good, is it? It's not going to stop you from getting poisoned. That's stupid. That's a retard who wrote that. A retard wrote that. A man who is retarded in academia and understanding of logic, who thinks that somebody shot by an arrow, right, of poison, and then which goes into the body system and kills them, and then they cut a little bit of flesh away where the arrow actually hit them, and then that means they're not going to get poison when they eat the dead thing. That's a retard. A man of a retarded mental capacity, a man of poor education and low caliber of logic, wrote that and understood it because he's a retard. And if he went to a college or university in this day and age, he would be recognised as a retard and of bad capacity for education, and likely wouldn't be admitted to Oxford University unless they're actually teaching that to Oxford University students now, and they haven't clicked on the fact that, you know, I just shot some with deadly poison. Oh, it's all right. Just, you know, trim it up a bit. It'll be all right. You know, we'll eat them for tea. It's cannibalism. And then, you know, it's actually going to get the poison out of the system. Bollocks. Soap, too, is very useful for this purpose. An invention of the Gauls for giving a reddish tint to the hair. I thought they were meant to put lime in the hair and make it go white colour, not red. The substance is prepared from tallow and ashes. The best ashes for this purpose being those of the beech and yoke elm. So this will turn the hair red. The Gallic provinces too were pervaded by the magic art, even within living memory, for it was the Emperor Tiberius who outlawed their Druids. Right, so the Druids were actually outlawed. It wasn't a joke. So we're likely the Druids weren't doing some sort of dodgy deals then with the Greeks if they're outlawed, because that wouldn't be productive, you know, to them, unless they pretended they were outlawed. So likely we're talking. If it really was outlawed, then we're talking seriously. The invasion was legitimate, not just like the Druids call the Romans over to sort out the misbehaving people. It's like Christianity illegal as well. He outlawed them and all that nation of wizards and physicians. But why make further mention of these prohibitions with reference to an art which has now crossed the very ocean even, and has penetrated to the void recesses of nature? Penetrate to the void recesses of nature. Well, does that mean like, the uninhabited parts? Yeah, but isn't that where the religion came from? The religion is meant to have come from Algeria and Africa, They're saying it's going the other way. According to them, then, they're saying that these ancient prehistoric religion, what we're talking about, Karnak in Ireland and England, they're saying that it went the other way. They're saying that it's gradually spread and gone into Africa and Algeria, according to this, and that those drawings and paintings and rock art, it's the opposite way around. They're flipping it. Could that be possibly true? Or did it originate from there? Or does it mean that the Druids themselves have been travelling and spreading their religion? You see, this is the thing. The thing with the Druids is this. They went on missionaries, right? Or does it mean that when it's spreading, it means that they're going and, like what the Christians did. The Christians spread Christianity by going on missionaries. Obviously, if the Celts have got a religion and order, they want to try and encourage people to follow it and spread it. Obviously, Tiberius isn't liking it too much, likely because if it's having a effect over the empire, the Roman Empire, he's not going to be too keen on it. So it's got outlawed, and then maybe some did spread downwards, but that's the reverse theory. It could be that all the Britain, ancient prehistoric sites in Britain and Ireland are very, very, very a lot older than they're claiming they are, and it could be that they're even older than the sites in Algeria and the rock art in Algeria, and the cave paintings, could have gone the other way, downwards, but probably unlikely if they're saying that we originated from the jungles in Africa, unless it was like a bit of a ping pong ball match going back up and down, isn't it? I don't think that the Romans are wanting to acknowledge. They don't seem to want to acknowledge the before the Gauls, the real old prehistoric. They're saying, it came from somewhere. It came from Lustria. It came from here. It came from there. But they're not actually. They don't seem to be talking about the very, very old religion of actual Gaul itself, the place of where it is, This being the case, we cannot too highly appreciate the obligation that is due to the Roman people for having put an end to those monstrous rites, or ones that they didn't understand, in accordance with which to murder a man was to do an act of the greatest devoutness, and to eat his flesh was to secure the highest blessings of health. Now they're trying to make out they were cannibals. I severely doubt that. You wouldn't. I don't think that you would do that, because why would you go to all the trouble of making cairns and all that and stuff? I don't think you'd have. I can't see it myself. Knowing your own heart and mind and body of the person you are genetically, it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, they were eating people in Indonesia in the jungles, apparently there's still cannibalism and there's a lot of shady, dodgy stuff going around. I just don't think I don't think the Druids were like that, and I think that it's they're trying to rubbish him, and they're trying to. There was some sort of power conflict going on, and I think they were being attacked. Just in the same manner that they're making them change their names, in Ireland, they're making them change the spelling of their names. There's been at the present day, struck with fascination, Britain still cultivates this art, and that with such awe-inspiring rituals that she might almost seem to have been the first to communicate them to the people of Persia. To such a degree are nations throughout the whole world, totally different as they are and quite unknown to one another, in agreement upon this one point. Seems to be some sort of agreement that he says that all the people don't know each other and don't understand each other, but they've all got this certain art and religion behind it all, which is kind of quite contradictory, really. To highly appreciate obligations to Roman people for having put an end to those monstrous rites, in accordance with which, before it was known in what estimation coral was held by the people of India, the Gauls were in the habit of adorning their swords, shields, and helmets with it. Really? He's making a connection between India. He mentions India and a connection between India and the Gauls. Now, we know that the pre-Celtic language, the Indo-European language of the origin of the language of that Indian one, the counting system in India is very similar to the Celtic one, the Gaelic. And there's a connection there. Now, this writer is acknowledging a connection between something in Gaul they're doing in India, so he knows about it. Now, what he does earlier on in some of those other pieces is he mentions the ancient religions and rites of the Celts coming from somewhere else, but he doesn't say India or have a connection to India. He claims that it's this Lustria place, right? But yet here, he's admitting that he knows a connection between Gauls and India, which is where the language comes from. Now, earlier on, he was saying, the languages, places, names, and the religions and the names of the people are connected. Like Kali, the Indian god Kali, and Kelly, it's Kelly. So now, later on down here, he's admitting it. He's admitting a connection to India. Now, what's the connection to India? The real connection is the names and places and the gods, right? Yeah. He's only merits them to have coral in connection with use of coral. He knows a lot more than he's telling us. Earlier on, he was claiming that the religious rites and names and everything is Illustria, right? When he knows very well that there's religious connections to Kali, right? Kali in India, and the Celts, Kelly, right? If that ain't the name of a freaking place and a freaking people and name and a religion that's connected, then what is? So right there, he's admitting a connection that he's denying earlier on, because he's a lying bastard. He's a Billy Bullshitter. Telling porkers. And there we come to the end of the piece. Porker. What does Mike think to it? Porker. Porker. What does Porker think to it?